Welcome back. You are now doing less with John and Jeff. Thanks for listening. Thanks for all your feedback from the previous episodes. Today we're going to dive into the hot topic that people are talking about, which is the impeachment hearings.
That's right. So whatever you're doing, stop. You're doing too much. Put it down. We need you to be doing less right now with us. It's very important stuff we're going to be talking about.
Important. It's the most important issue that our humble nation faces right now. We are at the brink of allowing a man to stay in office who has committed high crimes, high treason. I don't even know.
Yes. High crimes and misdemeanors is what they're getting them for.
So full disclosure, I haven't been following too close other than the New York Times impeachment briefing in my email inbox that I immediately click as read and then move on because I don't have time to read it. But I mean, it's people, it's keeping a lot of people, stimulated, occupied. What about you, Jeff? You've been following along with the impeachment?
Honestly, I haven't been following on too much. I did read.
You haven't been following
the transcript of the phone call in question.
You said you.
I have not been following it too much.
Okay,
yet.
Just clarify.
Yeah, I read the transcript of the phone call. It didn't look great. Am I convinced he committed a crime? Not necessarily, and maybe we can get into like the two sides of the thing. But as far as I know, that's really the only hard evidence is the I guess they have a few witnesses of the phone call, but if they're witnessing the phone call at the end of the day, the evidence of the phone call is probably more important than any witness, unless they heard some other additional conversations.
So, and by the phone call, he's referring to a phone call between Donald Trump and Ukrainian, I don't even know who, Ukrainian
ambassador, I think.
Ambassador. Withholding aid. Donald Trump was withholding aid to Ukraine for their crisis, some kind of crisis.
It's like war aid.
War aid.
Like military aid.
And
because Russia's up their ass.
Right. So withholding military aid on the premise that they would receive it after a successful investigation into Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden, otherwise known as a quid pro quo, is what the accusation is. That's something that's not okay to hold another government hostage, I guess you could call it, or like blackmail them until they do your bidding. So it's got a lot of people following along to see whether he did commit this act, Donald Trump, or if I guess the defense from Donald Trump is that he did nothing wrong. He's just kind of said
the phone call was perfect, as he might say.
Right. So, and I guess we can take a little step back to not get too political. I mean, we don't really, neither of us would either come out for or against Trump, I would say, on this podcast. We're kind of just here to discuss the facts, discuss the actual, in a previous episode, I called it, what did I say, economic logistics, or the monetary logistics, just kind of just logistics of things that are happening. What is actually happening? What are the effects? What are the causes and effects?
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do is keep scope, like in terms of look at what actually is important and is actually going to affect people's lives. So I don't know. It sounds really important that Donald Trump may get removed over this thing.
Yeah, I mean, impeachment's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal, but also is it?
Right. So, okay, that's what we'll talk about. So don't get upset if you're a big Trump supporter or if you hate Trump and think that what we're saying is either one of those things, because what's kind of turned me off from following the whole, it's like you see someone testify, or someone testifies, a clip comes out, from the hearing goes viral, and then I'll see the direct response to that same clip from two different people based on whether or not they support the actors or the entities involved will come out with a directly opposition of like, oh, he's completely exonerated. This is all you need to see. Versus, oh, he's done for. He's, this is open and shut case. He is going to be, completely, what is it? Found guilty of all charges. So,
Right.
but
And
let's
I think
just
part of this is evidence in the sense that it seems like probably none of the Republicans will be voting to remove, and probably all the Democrats will be voting to remove. So it's like, if it's that partisan,
right.
how much is
There's
there,
not a lot of logic going. There's not a lot of logical thinking.
It's kind of like people have made up their mind.
Yeah.
And
They're
then
voting for their
evidence
team.
doesn't really matter.
Right. Yeah. So, Jeff, why don't you tell me what is going to happen? Like, what's the big deal? What's going to happen if impeachment happens?
Well, if he's just impeached, he's already been impeached. They're impeaching him. They've already the inquiry is over. They're going to impeach him.
Okay.
But all that means is they're going to decide whether or not he needs to be removed for his high crimes and misdemeanors or whatever it may be. And so the impeachment is the process of deciding whether or not you're going to remove the president. So Bill Clinton was impeached.
Right.
He was not removed. And he was impeached for lying about on the stand that he got a blowjob from Monica Lewinsky. And so he said he didn't, and he did. And so people were like, oh, he perjured himself. And that's a crime. Perjury is a crime. So it's not it's not nothing. It's kind of funny, I think, but
yeah,
it doesn't seem like that big a deal to me. Like, everyone lies about shit like that all the time, I think. But yeah, I guess you expect a little better from your president. That's fair. But so this time there's this phone call, like John said, where he's withholding aid, and he wants to figure out what happened with Hunter Biden. So Hunter Biden is Joe Biden's son, and Joe Biden used to be the vice president. And Hunter Biden got this job at this like oil company in Ukraine, and he doesn't even speak Ukrainian, and he doesn't know anything about the oil industry. So it is really suspicious, honestly. Like, he got this like high level job without really any credentials. So honestly, it is very suspicious. Now, so I guess the defense of Trump is there's legitimate what appears to be corruption going on. So you don't want to give aid to a country that is corrupt. So you're saying, okay, I'm not going to give you this aid until I can make sure there's going to be no funny business. And so that's like the defense. It's like, okay, if that's the case, then there's no wrongdoing. Do I think that's what Trump was thinking about when he had this phone call versus like getting dirt on Biden? Honestly, I probably would lean towards the fact that he was probably just trying to get dirt on Biden. Can I prove that? No. Can anyone prove that? So far, I don't think so. And so, I don't know. I'm kind of just like neither here nor there on this thing, where it's like both sides seem like they have legitimate arguments here, but generally you give the benefit to the doubt of a person if you can't like prove without a reasonable doubt that they did something wrong. And I think that's, again, evidenced by the fact that it's like, if you're a Democrat, get rid of him. If you're a Republican, it's like, oh, you're crazy. This is a hit job or whatever.
Right. And so if they're successful, if the Democrats are successful, then congratulations. Your prize is Donald Trump. I mean, he's very embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Mike Pence is the president for a year. And then, that's it. You're running up against Mike Pence, which is pretty much the same as Donald Trump, I guess. I guess he's not as much of a personality.
I don't think I think he's probably easier to beat than Trump, and so there could be some sort of political motivation there, where it's like, oh, if we can get rid of Trump, in the impeachment, then we don't have to worry about it in an election. But I don't know. Like, what are you hoping your guy is going to get done? You know, like I look at both sides of the field, and I just what significant changes do we think these people are going to be making to our everyday lives?
Right. It's like it's not like they're making any like Donald Trump has done what in his presidency, like directly because of him. Like the corporate tax cut, maybe.
And I mean, that's
Uh,
not even him alone. Like, he had an immense amount of support from his cabinet, which I guess is appointed by him, but and Congress. You know, it had to go through. It's not like he can't just make laws. Congress had to. So there's already enough people in Congress to get that done. The tariffs, he's able to just say, "I decree, therefore tariff," which that doesn't seem okay to me.
right.
And
At the,
I'd be
yeah.
very happy if that stopped happening. But
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
yeah, he can just kind of be like, okay, tariffs, and he just slaps them on. I don't know why the president has this power. I don't know where it came from, but it wasn't originally intended in the Constitution if you look at it. So
Right.
it's kind of wiggled its way in there somehow.
Yeah, that is really bizarre. I ever since the beginning, up to and including when he called himself the Tariff Man and beyond, I was very dumbstruck as to why that was allowed to happen because, yeah, the tax code is very explicit. And so
Hmm.
to just start levying tariffs um, it seems to not make sense to me that one entity should have that much power. Because what if he's just having a bad day? Like it seems like he does sometimes, and he just says, screw it, th- you know, just gonna punish everybody because I feel like I'm upset or whatever
Right, like companies can go out of business from
because
tariffs.
of
It's
tariffs,
no
right?
joke. Like people can lose their jobs because of these things. It's
Right.
like
It's not something you want
it's
to mess around with.
right. It's very serious implications, and it's just for one person to just be like, "All right, we're doing it." It's that's a lot of power, and
Yeah.
so I mean, I guess I'd probably blame where this power came from more than I'd blame him because I just think people are generally inclined to abuse their power. I don't really think that much of most people, so it's just like I'd rather see that power go away than the person go away because I don't really trust the next guy to be any better. So I think it comes from the reason he's able to do it is there's like a national security clause, and
Mm.
like China's stealing our IP, so you can slap tariffs as like a national security concern. That seems very loosey goosey to me if you ask
Yeah.
me.
All right. So the reason the Democrats are trying to impeach him is to directly counteract the tariffs. That's what they're saying, right?
No.
No. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Maybe that would make it more noble of an attempt to uphold the Constitution, to uphold, a
Right.
republic that's based on values and not whims of an individual.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, that I don't see that. I don't see that in the New York Times briefing. Um, that's not what they're citing as to the reason why they're inquiring to this impeachment. Um, so that kind of just leaves me with the thought that they're just a power grab to
Hmm.
uh, to push their platform. Um, there's a lot of ado. It's a lot of ado about
Hmm.
a lot of people involved, a lot of lawyers. I haven't seen any. Have you seen any estimates of like costs of the
No.
impeachment?
I mean, I guess one cost could be like Congress's time, but I actually think this is a good thing. If Congress is too busy worrying about impeachment and they're not doing their regular job in which they're screwing up the country, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like when you have like you're in charge of watching a toddler, and it's just like, all right, they're painting on the walls, but it's not actually that bad. I can just paint over it. They could be lighting the house on fire, so I'm okay with that. I'll let them just keep painting on the walls.
So that's one positive, I think. I mean, yeah, if he gets removed, honestly, you know, I think there's enough in there for me to believe he abused his power. Yeah, I don't think they don't have enough evidence to approve it, but I'm not going to be like, this is tragic. So I don't know. Then we just get Pence. I don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's like back when Obama was president and he was executing drone strikes that was like killing so many people that he couldn't even like he couldn't even name like some of the targets of the drone strike. And it was like that to me is completely unwieldy of like that power to not use that responsibly and to take uh every single drone strike, every single murder of of foreign people, but no one really cared about that.
Right. Yeah.
No one, still people don't care.
Yeah, it's like how many innocent people has our
Literally,
government killed?
yeah,
Like that's like murder as far as I'm concerned. And so, people don't really seem to give a shit about that. So, I mean, here, let's get there's some numbers on this. I'll pull that up now, but you know, it's weird that this is such a hot button issue, and if you can prove quid pro quo, then yeah, he should get removed because that is an abuse of power. But it's also killing innocent people is not an abuse of power. That's actually well within the power of the U.S. government. So you can't really impeach the president for doing that. So I don't know. It seems like this is an arbitrary line in the sand, if you ask me. Because one is much more morally reprehensible to me than the other, and yet one is fit for removal and the other isn't.
right.
So it to me, it's like I just don't. I don't care that much. I'd rather see us killing less people for no reason. And like if we can do that, I would care much less about. I'd be willing to forgive some other indiscretions, I guess.
Yeah, I think there should be impeachment all the time for every single thing the president does, and then they'll not be able to pass any bills.
Well, the president doesn't pass any bills.
No, I'm saying the Congress is tied up.
Oh yeah, they're tied up,
so
they can't pass any bills.
Yeah, that's funny. Are you looking up the stats for Obama?
I don't know if it's just Obama, or it has been reported that over 160 children have died from UAV-launched attacks in Pakistan, that over 1,000 civilians have been injured, and known militant leaders constitute only 2% of all drone-related fatalities. This was during the period from 2004 2011. So it's not just Obama, it's Bush too. Mm-hmm. Actually, here on Wikipedia, it says Trump signed an executive order. Oh, this is not good. Revoking the requirement that U.S. intelligence officials officially report the number of civilians killed. So that actually decreases the visibility on this type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. People think Trump is so different from Obama, but I don't know.
Yeah.
To me, the difference is it's not that significant. Most of our spending is irrelevant to the president,
Right.
It's going to be spent no matter what. They have very small effect on like discretionary spending, and they can veto bills, which is pretty powerful, but how much really changes from president to president,
Right. It may seem, I mean, Trump wants it to seem like it is a lot. Like every time the stock market hits a new high, he tweets. Like I don't know, he tweets like stock market's all-time highs today. Congratulations, like enjoy your wealth, or what does he say? Like, spend your money wisely, like as if it's like, as if like a that's just like money in the pockets of Americans, and B, as if he had anything to do with it. like,
Right,
it,
no. Like his tax cuts may have provided some additional cash flow to companies to do some buybacks to raise the stock market a little bit, but like the tax cuts were what, like 3% or whatever.
and corporate earnings haven't gone up. like,
Yeah, so
it hasn't even actually helped corporations. It's just, well, what I was gonna say is, I think what he takes credit for, what he is taking credit for when he tweets stuff like that, is that like when he tweets things that make the market go up, which he obviously does. He tweets and the market moves, and um and so I think he kind of envisions his, just how he navigates topics. Like every time he like addresses media or tweets or something, I think in the back of his mind he's thinking, how does this affect the stock market? Because you can tell when the stock market starts going down, he'll tweet like, "Oh, trade talks going well," which will make the markets go back up. And so I think he considers it a success when the markets go up, because he feels like, "Oh, I I played my part well. Like I played the part that was necessary to generate all time highs in the stock market." Which, if that is the case, if that's what he is attempting to do, that is market manipulation. That's like stock price manipulation, which is like illegal. That's a violation of the SEC.
right.
Like that's like, uh, what's the actual term? I guess it would be market manipulation, or like
It's like price manipulation or
price
something. I
manipulation.
don't know.
So it's like,
I don't know the exact term.
why would you be happy about like manipulating the price? I don't know. That to me,
I was trying to get like a clearer picture of the drone thing, and yeah, no, the numbers I said were about. I think that encompassed everything. I was just reading it.
yeah. Well,
But
you're not
yeah,
going to
no,
get a
like
clearer picture because it sounds like Donald Trump has prohibited the release
yeah,
of
no,
like
yeah,
accuracy.
yeah. So I don't even know if there's data. I'd have to dig into that if they've gone down or up. I wouldn't even know, and maybe there is no way to know because well, he signed it in 2019, so there should be data up until this point. There's nothing on the Wikipedia page though, like, but I mean, still, like, we killed 160 children. Like, that's a like, that's
Yeah.
fucked up, you know.
Yeah. It's
So
like a war crime.
yeah, it's just, and yet, like, that to me is so much more significant than
What he
a
said on the
quid pro
phone.
quo or whatever, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, it's just like, and yet I don't know, we never talk about that. No one ever talks about that. Like,
Hmm.
so it's just, like, how much do people really care, and how much is it political? That's what
Hmm.
I'm wondering. Because I don't know, like, it didn't seem like Obama was a bad guy. Like, I don't think he was out there trying to kill children, but it's like he's wielding this awesome power of UAV missiles, and it's like someone's like, all right, we could kill these terrorists. They're probably terrorists. And it's like, all right, let's do it. And then turns out it was bad intelligence. And you just killed a bunch of children. It's like, I doubt that's what he was hoping for. But it still happened.
Right.
And it's like, I get that's like, these are tough decisions. But, you know, shouldn't these tough decisions be the forefront of our consciousness if we're killing children? You know?
Yeah.
Like,
I agree.
so that's like, yeah, it's a tough decision. I'm in the camp of, yeah, let the terrorists go. I'd rather not kill the children. I don't know, but maybe I can see the argument for the other side. I'm not saying it's completely illegitimate, but I'm not a big strike first kind of person.
Hmm. Yeah. That's well said.
But yeah, and so I mean, I don't know. So we remove them. We don't remove them. We get either a year of Trump, maybe 4 more years of Trump. I think people are acting like 4 more years of Trump is gonna like collapse the United
Hmm.
States or something. I think that's just so hyperbolic. It's just like At the end of the day, the power of the president, while it is significant, it's still limited in many ways. And you'll see this in like Trump tries to do like order people to do things all the time, and then they just don't do it because he can't just tell anyone to do anything he wants.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
Right.
people all the time refuse his demands because he can't make me do that. So it's like his power is still very limited, and so I think we focus so much on the presidential election. Like there's so much attention on it, and so much attention on Trump in the media. Like every single day, at least 80% of the headlines have to do with Trump, and it's just like whether you love him or hate him, how much does he really matter at the end of the day? Like how much is he affecting your personal life? Like how
Right.
much change is he really going to affect in the system? I don't know. I think the change has to come from the bottom up. I think like if you look at like an issue like gay marriage, I think it became legal when it was cowardly for uh, politicians not to oppose it. Like it was the easiest thing in the world for politicians to be like, "Yep, I'm pro gay marriage." Like if a politician now was like, "I'm anti gay marriage," that's like a brave thing to say because it's so
The
it's
tide
so
has turned.
unpopular to
Right.
be anti-gay marriage at this point that it's like it takes literally zero. It by the time it got passed, it took literally zero political courage to get that thing
Mm-hmm.
passed because it's you would have lost basically no votes because it's just everyone. So many of the people were just like, yeah, no, I'm for this thing at that
Mm-hmm.
point, and so that's what I mean when I'm saying change comes from the bottom up. Is I think it's much more important for the cultures and the culture and the ideas to change and we should be thinking and discussing at that level than it is to get the right guy in the
Yeah.
right position or whatever.
Catch him on
'Cause-
exactly what he said on the phone.
Right.
Like that is so little to. Yeah, I would say on this subject, if we really wanted to, target the man with the actual power, we would all be talking about Jerome Powell.
We
you
always
know,
got to talk about our boy Jerome.
yeah, I mean, to 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 put into perspective of like how much Trump has talked about versus how much Powell has talked about
Hmm.
versus taking into account or like weight them based on how much power they actually have. It's like Trump is always talked about and he doesn't actually have as much power. I mean, he's got a lot of power, but as
Yeah.
as much as people talk about it, it's like his decision, you know, will affect
Yeah, I
everyone's life.
think
But
Jerome
Jerome
Powell has
Powell's
more power than Trump. It's more specific. It's not as broad. Like Trump has more breadth of like reach. But I think just the single thing that the Fed has control over is so significant that that thing is actually more powerful than all the
yeah,
few things that the president can touch.
yeah,
I don't know if you
definitely.
agree.
Yeah, I mean, the to me the idea that like the controlling the money supply, which is what the Federal Reserve does. Jerome Powell is the the chair of the Federal Reserve, so he controls the money supply. That is like, I mean, all of politics, right, is the application of policy, and policy is enacted through economics, which is trying to motivate people through uh, you know economic economic motivators, right? If you don't want people to do something, you levy a tax and you say now it's more expensive to do that. Versus, if you want some people to do something, then you'll give them like you'll allow it to be tax deductible or something, to make it cheaper to do it, and so people do it more. So politics is really just an argument of how should we apply economics, in my opinion. So that's like what all the politics, all the branches of government, all of the interpretation of the Constitution, all the people that are elected are arguing over what policy should be enacted, how should we implement our applied economics into our society, right? Well, the Federal Reserve controls the money supply, which controls basically prices, basically all prices. So that lone body, which is controlled by, well, not controlled, but reports to one man, affects all prices in the economy, which is
Mhm.
like,
It is a
that's
board vote, though. He's not. It's not like his lone
it's not
decision.
right. But from what I read in the, you know, about what goes on in the Federal Reserve, it is very much like what is the way that like they don't think what is the truth. They think it is what is the way that we're thinking about something. Like it's all spun and there's all this groupthink. And when
Mm,
there's groupthink, it's like very influenced by I think Jerome Powell has a lot of say over.
probably, yeah.
So I just think that if we were to target him with as much you know publicity and call him on his intent and the exact logistics and actual subtleties of what he's actually doing and what he's working on and why he's doing things, I think that it would be eye opening into a lot of the things that we see today and a lot of
Hmm.
bubbles that are formed. I think directly can be, and it's not just Jerome Powell. He's holding the chair currently. There's been Janet Yellen. There's been Alan
Hmm.
Greenspan, and there's been
Ben
uh,
Bernanke.
Ben Bernanke. So I would say those. If you wanted to pick four names that you could really target as like influencers, it's like
Yeah,
those people don't even come up when they're like, in my opinion, the most important names.
right. I think people go, "Oh, they're smart, so like they must know what they're doing, right?"
Right.
But it's just like I don't
Whereas
know. There's
Trump
plenty of.
is, whereas Trump isn't. I could make better. People say I could make better decisions than him.
Right.
Therefore,
But it's just like I don't know. Smart people do make terrible decisions all the time. So it's
yeah,
just
absolutely.
in fact, the way most people make up their mind is actually from like an emotional seed. Is they just have this core emotional attachment, and they're like, "This is what I believe," and then they look at the evidence from there and they pick the evidence that supports what they already believe to begin with.
Mm,
Like most people don't actually just start with the evidence and they go, okay, here's my conclusion. That's not really how most people think about most things. That's how some people think about some things, but most people about most things is just like, this is just what I believe, and then all right, let's see what's out there to prove my point. I
I
mean,
think
myself
it.
included, obviously.
Right. Yeah, that reminds me of a study um, where where people were given limited information about picking horses to win um, a race, and when they were given limited information, they were asked to pick the horses and then rate how confident they were on which horse was going to do the best. And so they would, pick their winners, and they weren't very confident. Um, and then further in the study, they would give people a lot more information. You know, all the way every piece of information they could ever ask for, they would like provide for them, and then so they would rate the horses in that scenario, and then rank their confidence. So in the second scenario, they rated themselves more highly confident because they were able to answer the questions they had. But in both scenarios, obviously they didn't do any better. They tested about the same. So that
Hmm.
just kind of shows that like people in the second scenario were more confident because they were able to have more information. But that just goes to show they were picking the information that they already made they didn't do any better on the choice. They already made their choice with the limited
Mm.
information off the beginning. Every piece of information they got made them more confident, but it didn't make them any better at picking horses.
Right. Wow, that's
So
super interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely evidence of that, right? Like, cause they're like, oh yeah, I want this horse, and then it's like, what else do you need to know? It's like, oh yeah, no, this is definitely the guy.
right,
But it's like, it's just you're just confirming what you already believe.
right.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Um, and then I guess this is kind of tangential, but I think you told me about there was a study where like they gave people a stack of pictures, and most of them were photos that of things they actually did, like memories they actually have,
Mm,
and they're like, just tell me about what's happening in this photo, and then in that stack of photos, they would insert like doctored photos where they Photoshop things or whatever. It didn't actually happen. It's not a part of their real memory. And they would just go through the stack of photos without skipping a beat. They would get to the doctor photo and they'd be like, oh yeah, and then in this one we did this and this, and then they would get to the next one. And they basically just completely fabricated a memory from a doctor photo without even thinking about it. And so it's like the way we actually really think about, or the way we actually remember our own lives or everything, a lot of it is just inference to begin with from some emotional instinct, right? Like, because if you thought you had a great time, your recollection of those photos may be completely different if you thought you had a terrible time based on the same facts or whatever. So it's like even our own memories are in a way influenced by this really what is just just a gut reaction to things.
Yeah. So why do we talk about this? Well, it's important to know that because that's the first step in becoming more logical.
Right.
Like knowing that you're illogical can then plant the seeds that are necessary to stop yourself in your illogicality and correct, say, hold on, I know I'm acting irrationally. What can I do to fix my ways and be more rational, more logical?
Yeah, what I like to do a lot of time is ask myself, why do I believe this? If you can catch yourself and just say, okay, wait, why do I think this? And then if you literally have nothing, that's proof that you didn't think it through. Like you just made up your mind beforehand. And I do that all the time where it's like, oh yeah, this is right. And then if you just sit and go, okay, wait, why do I think this? You might actually have a hard time convincing yourself.
Yeah. I read these tweets. I follow some people that are like quantitative. They do quantitative analysis on the stock market, which I don't really believe in. We could get into that some other time, but yeah. I follow this one guy who tweets maybe twice an hour about certain stocks or indices that are like producing patterns. Like they look for different patterns in the stocks in the graphs, like and these patterns are literally like. It goes up to hit a local maximum, then goes down to a certain price, then goes up to another local maximum, then down to the same price, then up to the first local maximum, and then back down to the same price, and then once it hits that same price, it's called a head and shoulders top. It's just going to go to the floor. So they're just looking for just completely arbitrary patterns that they believe that will indicate what the future of the the stock or the index will be. So that's not really important. That's just what this guy does for I guess a living, or he's a hobbyist or whatever. He's looking at this stuff, and he always tweets out and it's just interesting for me to see like what he's seeing, and then I like follow the stock and then see what it actually does, and he's not he's not often right, I don't think. I mean, it's basically just.
I mean, if he was always random. Right, it would just be infinite money.
Yeah, right.
like.
Yeah. So I mean, but it's just interesting for me to see what he's looking for, and then, so recently, the past 3 days, he has been really closely watching the S&P 500 graph. And he's been drawing lines that show like, oh, the S&P 500 is about to go down a lot. Like he'll post like, yesterday he probably posted like 6 pictures of like, oh, this is really bearish, this is really bad, this is really bad. And then today he posts, a graph that it shows he's just like, as much as it pains me to say, this is actually bullish for the S&P 500. Like this is a technical like. It's showing technical support on this graph, and it could actually go up from here. And I'm just like reading that. I'm just like, well, buddy, if you are basing your analysis quantitatively, it shouldn't pain you to say anything. Like, like the graphs are what they are. Like you're just reporting. Like that just completely undermines his whole like theory of quantitative analysis. This is what this is showing. This is like for him to say it pains me to say. Well, then it instantly tells you, oh, he's got a vested interest in finding the ones that go down. That's why he posts so many pictures of you know, technical indicators that the S&P 500 is going to go down because he's got some vested interest that he wants it to go down. The second he sees, it pains me to say, it's like how skewed is his view really at that point?
Right.
It's just
And
funny.
like for me the problem with technical analysis is like yeah, I could understand there could be a case that like maybe certain patterns cause certain sporadic behaviors in human psychology. Like maybe if there's a certain set of price movements, people panic. Maybe I don't know.
Right.
I haven't looked at it closely enough, but uh, but what is like if that guy's ever just sat and go, okay, this is a Head and Shoulders. That means it's gonna collapse. Why?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
if you just say, why do I think this? I
Right.
cannot think of a single logical reason. Again, other than if people see a Head and Shoulders, they just they just fucking panic. Like
Yeah.
what? There's no logical explanation for that I can conjure up, unless you had statistics to back it up. But you don't, because if you did, then again, you could just make infinite money. Because as soon as
Right.
anyone sees that, it's just be like, oh, money. I know exactly where it's going.
Yeah.
And then there would be no more money to make because then it's like we all figured this out. It doesn't work anymore.
Right.
We kind of went off on a tangent there. I guess none of this has to do with impeachment, but I guess that just proves our point that we don't care.
Yeah, I mean, if you, yeah, well, I guess you could tie it back. If you think a certain way about the impeachment trial, you got to ask yourself, why do I believe this? And if the
Right.
answer is, oh, I really don't like Trump, or I really do like Trump, that's probably an indicator that you've got a vested interest. You're not actually thinking logically or rationally, right?
Right.
If he broke the law, if he did what is illegal, then yeah, do what's necessary to. But if he didn't, you know,
Yeah. In fact, I would love to measure people's confidence in whether there was wrongdoing with the level of support or, um, I guess hate. I don't. What's the opposite of support? We could just say hate. Okay, like how vested you are for or against Trump. I would venture to guess is highly correlated with your confidence in either wrongdoing or no wrongdoing. Like me, I'm not. I don't really care that much about. I don't have like that much of an opinion of Trump. I don't. Yeah, it's just like whatever. And I'm looking at the evidence, and I can see the case for. I can see the case against. I'm not really.
right,
I don't feel like I have a horse in the race, but I feel like the people who are super like hate Trump are like, oh, this is egregious, and the people who love Trump are like, no, it's perfect, perfect phone call.
yeah,
So,
right, exactly.
I can't say for sure that's correlated, but I would guess it is if I'm being honest.
Well, yeah, it just goes back to what you said. It's like all of the Republicans are voting that
Yeah.
he's innocent. All the Democrats. Do you
So
think I should?
yeah, I mean, what?
Okay, you go ahead.
Just look at the evidence yourselves, guys. Don't just take our word for it because we're just two guys.
Yeah.
But again, if you feel strongly one way or another, I would say ask yourself, why do I feel this way? And then, if you can convince yourself, at least you've done your homework. But you might just be the people picking horses who got all the evidence and still suck anyway.
All right, sounds good. All right, so in our research, in our preparation for these episodes that we're recording, the Do Less podcast in its entirety, Jeff and I have been doing research, have been listening to personalities that are out there that exist, that we owe a lot of credit to because they really opened our eyes up to a lot of great info. And so if you like what we say, or if you want to hear further, because Jeff and I, we're only the intellectual love child of the following people that we learn from. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out there where I get my information from. I try to get multiple opinions as much as I can and not just take people's words for it. But I think some of these guys are pretty good, pretty trustworthy. They've proven themselves to be, and so it's always good to get a second opinion. But I mean, for example, Peter Schiff has taught me a lot about economics, and I think he's very good at explaining things in a way that anyone can understand them. So I learn a lot from him, so want to appreciate that.
Yeah. I would say the Mises Institute with Jeff Deist. Jeff Deist has a great podcast, but the Mises Institute does a lot of work trying to make sure like true Austrian economics ideals are being discussed and are promulgating through time, because Mises himself and Rothbard, other Austrian economics, laid a lot of the groundwork for libertarianism and free markets and you know reliable hard money that our society needs, as we're explaining in these podcasts. So I think a lot of credit goes to them.
Yeah, and another guy is Tom Woods. He's like a big libertarian guy. He's also like an Austrian economics guy. He used to work with Peter Schiff, I think, and so he shares a lot of the same opinions. But he's really big in the podcast space. He has one like every day.
I would add Danielle DiMartino Booth. She's a really great economist. Her history is actually a Federal Reserve employee. She was an employee at the Federal Reserve Dallas branch. And she wrote a book about the Federal Reserve and like what kind of goes on behind closed doors there. So she knows a lot, and she is a very vocal critic of the Federal Reserve and what they're doing wrong. And so she's a good example of someone who, was part of the system but didn't, she didn't gorge on the bullshit. She was able to keep a level head.
Yeah.
And she tries to make the
Yeah, another great is Nassim Taleb. He has written quite a few books about economics. He's not an Austrian, but I think the emphasis in a lot of his books is in this idea that a lot of things that happen are just inherently random. There's really, at the end of the day, no way you can't predict everything, but you can build systems that are protected against randomness. Like, you don't know when an earthquake's going to come, but you can build a building that can survive an earthquake. And so if you rely on the fact that you can predict earthquakes and that's how your system works, versus just saying, I don't know when it's going to come, so this building's going to stand and I don't know how strong it will be, but this building can do it no matter what. Like, that's a lot more robust than trying to predict the randomness. And so my ideas a lot on what people are actually capable of predicting, because I think some people would have you believe, a lot of these technical charts guys or whatever might have you believe they can predict the future, but it's a lot of times you really can't.
Yeah. And then I would say maybe debatably most the person to thank the most would be Milton Friedman.
The OG.
He's just the father of a lot of what this line of thinking came from him. Just he's really really good thinker, really good. Another guy that's really good at explaining it in a way that people can understand, and he was really approachable and really dedicated his life to promoting free markets and
and liberty. Economics. Yeah, and liberty. And he's not an Austrian guy. We don't really need to talk about what that means, but he did a lot to help people understand what was causing inflation in the 70s and help get that under control. And so he's just kind of been there's real stuff in the real world to thank him for due to his consulting and understanding of how the world works. And he's so good at if you just try to look at any videos of Milton Friedman. He's fantastic at explaining things in a way that absolutely anyone could understand without any prior understanding of anything. He's just, he puts it in a way that it's just, as long as you got a functioning brain, you can understand it.
Yes, specifically Free to Choose is a 10 series, hour-long episode, or 10 hour-long episodes on YouTube currently. So if anything that we've said sparks your interest, I would suggest checking out Free to Choose.
Yeah, it's a great series.
It's great. All right. Well, that does it.
Yeah.
See you next time. Thanks for doing less with us.
Thank you.